Welcome back to the Fruit Logistica Media Studio. My name's Chris White. I'm joined here, delighted to meet you, Rob Trice of Better Food Ventures out of Northern California, Rob.
That's correct, Silicon Valley.
Why are you here at Fruit Logistica?
Well, so I've been asked to speak tomorrow at the startup day. I'll be giving a keynote and fundamentally looking at what are the challenges, why can't we get ag tech to scale? And just by a little bit of way of background, I come from the mobile internet venture capital space, and about 7 years ago started to look at how information technology could be applied to food and agriculture. And so I want to talk a little bit about my experiences in the mobile space and how that applies or doesn't apply to food and agriculture.
So how does somebody get kind of tired of the mobile space and want to come into the food and agriculture space? What's so interesting about our sector?
Well, I'll be really honest. I think I was in the mobile space for about 15 years. When I first started, and this is part of what I'm going to say tomorrow, I was on it was the year 2000. The Nokia 8260 was a great phone. We had WAP, we had 2G networks, we had an alphanumeric keypad.
I remember those days.
Yeah, we're old enough to remember this. And I was trying to invest in location-based services and mobile marketing and mobile payment. And the reality is we were too early. The ecosystem hadn't come together yet.
But it kind of suggests that actually we're a bit behind the curve, if you will, in the fruit and vegetable business. Is that right?
Well, I think so. I mean, it's a complex space with a lot of moving parts, and we haven't yet gotten those elements together, particularly interoperable data. You know, every startup that I see talks about having their own application protocol interface to exchange data, but we don't have a lingua franca to describe food terms, agriculture terms. And I think that's one of the barriers that we have. We don't have that information flow yet on food and agriculture that we really need so that we can start to get that information out of the field through the supply chain and start to analyze it in a machine learning type of way.
But is there not also a kind of mobile space up here in the head that people kind of don't understand how these kind of technologies can apply to their business?
Yeah, but I yes and no. I mean, the reality is that particularly the new generation that's stepping in, they have a mobile phone in their pocket. They have an expectation they're going to be able to use that technology for productivity in the workspace, regardless of where that is. And so I think there is more mounting pressure and an expectation amongst the rest of the world that food and agriculture is going to adopt these technologies, and I will say catch up to a certain degree.
Well, one of the big issues that we have in the fruit and vegetable business is everybody's operating on really razor-thin margins. And if you're then looking at kind of saying, I've got to invest significant amounts of money into that sector, it's quite a big ask for people to do that.
Absolutely, and I think this is one of the big barriers that we have. And I think that particularly where I come from in Silicon Valley, there's not an appreciation for how razor-thin those margins really are. Yet, there are people down the value chain that are expecting food and agriculture to change. Some of those people do have money and should be putting that money to help pay for farmers to transition to better practices that meet their expectations in the marketplace. And so you're exactly right. I think there's two challenges that we have. On one hand, the venture capitalists and or technology solution providers may have a misguided expectation of how much margin or profit there is for a farming operation to put to work, or even in the supply chain. And then the second thing is we need to get the rest of the supply chain engaged and helping to fund that kind of outcome and that kind of production of food that we really expect.
But is there not a danger that they have such high expectations that they'll be disappointed quite quickly, and then they say, right, that's not a space we want to invest in?
So while I share excitement about this space, I don't want us to lose our moorings. I think we have to look at, the reality is that social media investing is not the same as food and ag investing.
It's not a copy and paste operation.
That's exactly right. And so tweeting is different than eating, is like what I like to say. You need to look at the fact that if you get it wrong in the food space, food safety cannot fail, or there may be fatal consequences. In a social media, if you get a game wrong, you can just do an update over the air to a mobile device, and there's no real ramifications. So there are good reasons why food and ag has to move more slowly. On the other hand, we need to change. We need to do things in a different way, and I think there's a growing expectation that food and ag will do that.
That's very, very interesting. I managed to tweet and eat, which is bizarre. Rob, thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, join us for more fascinating interviews in the Fruit Logistica Media Studio, all available on YouTube, coming to a computer to you very soon.